All right, perfect. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hello, my name is Antoine. I'm one of the tech leads at the DSC at UCF, and for this series, we're actually going to be talking about Intro to Flask. So let me get my slide deck up. And I apologize for the two screens. I'm using my desktop and my laptop, so if you don't see my face, it's because this part is showing my desktop for my mic. All right, so first things first, welcome everyone. Our series today is about Introduction to Flask, which is a web framework for Python to develop web service very quick and easy. We're going to be using Replit. If you look in the comment, you see that I left a link there and explain how to get started with that. And additionally, Nathan, one of our tech lead, will also show you how to get everything set up so you can start coding with us. So, like I mentioned, my name is Antoine. I'm one of the tech leads at the DSC at UCF. And now let me bring in Nathan to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Nathan. I'm also a tech lead here at the UCF DSC, and I'll be helping Anthony through the slides, and I'll also be working you guys through a demo with code, and everything will be run on Replit. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for you guys.
Perfect. So before we get into that, I want to just quickly explain DSC to everyone. So what is DSC? DSC is a student-run community that are supported and recognized by Google developers that empower students through a program like these, as through the DSC, Women Tech Makers, Women Developer Expert, and GDG. Our mission is to help bridge the gap between theory and practice. Is to help students to learn more instead of just doing everything through class. We learn a lot of code from concise topics or concepts, but oftentimes there's no expansion to real-world examples or tools used for these, and that's what we're here for, to bridge that gap. Here are some of the technologies we are trying to help everyone to learn. These are some of the practical tools you can see being used in the industry, and we help build on your technical skills. DSCs also hold events like these to show the following tools such as Flutter, TensorFlow, Firebase, and more. And being part of the DSCs, you're not only able to just join our events, you're actually able to join any events of DSC, since DSC is a global club around the world. For example, we have partners at FAU, and we also have some at FIU as well. So yeah, it's about peer-to-peer learning. We're trying to develop more of a strong team, meet people, make team, build projects, play with tech. That's we're all here to learn and develop our skills as programmers. So a little sneak peek of what's going to be occurring today. So we're going to be talking about what is Flask. We're going to talk about the template engine of Flask, the template variables. We're going to also talk about like companies that are actually using Flask, the project structure, how to do routes in Flask, and also showing you a little demo on how to create your own API. This is going to kind of be continuing from one of our old series on APIs. And this is showing you how to actually create it this time. And now I'm gonna pass it on to Nathan. Actually, let me actually explain this for Nathan first. So from the API part, from our last series, we know that API is a way to communicate with the network. So we have the client, which is normally our web browser, or even anything such as your mobile phone or so on, or even a desktop application. That uses API to hit a backend server, where the API is a bunch of requests that a service leaves open for you to use. As from the previous lessons, there's get, post, put, delete, options, and so on to learn how to communicate with the service. From there, depending on the service, you might need access to the database, you might not. It all depends. But this is the way how technology works when it comes to creating your own API, and that will always be passed on. With Flask, it's just one way of doing it, There's other ways of doing it. Today, we're just going to be discussing Flask. And some of the companies that actually use Flask for their backend is Airbnb, Reddit, Uber, Firefox, Lyft, and Netflix. And from here, I'll allow Nathan to discuss more about this for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Antoine. So as Antoine said, Flask is this very powerful and micro web framework in Python, and it allows us to do many things in the back end and front end of our code. So as you can see here in the screen, we have some HTML code, and we have this funny looking curly brackets on the screen. So this is what your code would look like. However, as you may know from previous sessions, this curly bracket notation in this type of for loop is not in HTML, right? So when someone enters your website, the server will get all users in the database and then tell this template to populate the page with information we have. So if you look at the example we have right there, for each user in the database, you open a paragraph with the name and the age of the person, and then we end the for loop. So in this case, we are going to create 2 paragraphs for each user we have in the database. So the template engine of Flask will just handle generating all this dynamic content for us, which is really powerful, considering with those 4 lines of code we can generate up to millions and millions, or actually unlimited content for you. Okay, so well, as an example, if our database had 3 users, the resulting web page would be the name and age of each person, as seen on the text on the right. So you can see name John Doe, age 21, name Jane Doe, age 25, and Bob Dawn, age 22. And so before we continue moving forward, I just wanted to explain this notation of the database. So here in Python, the variable database is formally known as a list of dictionaries. However, depending on your background, it might just be easier to see it as an array that holds objects, and these objects have name and age. And well, this type of notation is very common in Python, and we're going to be using for our database today, and potentially to render templates. So before we continue diving deeper, the project structure is something very important for Flask and Python. And not only that, it's a good practice if you're going to for the workforce, you need to have some structure format for your files, for everything to run properly. So the first thing that we have is the main.py file. So this is the file that contains the code for a Flask server, that will contain credentials for a database, that will contain API requests, everything related to backend and server will be in this file. Then we have this folder called static, which basically holds all the static content of the website, and that is any type of non-dynamic thing. So, or CSS style sheets, which define the style and the design of the page, or JavaScript, which runs on the browser. Fonts and images, they're all static resources. And then in addition to that, we have the templates folder, which will hold our HTML files. And these files will contain the template variables we talked about on the previous example. And we are going to access all these HTML files using routes like /home or /lists. When you go to a website, let's say google.com, and then /search, you're accessing the Google's search route. and we're going to talk a little bit more of that in the next slide. So routes, they're basically paths for your website or your API. And this is where you decide which URLs in your project are valid and what kind of content you display on each one of them. So here in this example, there are four types of routes that I wanted to talk about. So the first one that says homepage is just routing for /. So this is just defining a route to like your website. So let's say if you go to https://website.com or .com/, it will route to OK. And then the second example is basically just defining a simple route to the website.com/events. And then the return statement is just at this moment, all of them are the same because it's just an example. Then the third one, I want you to pay close attention to it because this one is a dynamic route and it's going to be very important for our demo today about APIs. So it's defining a route to website.com/event, and then it has the angular brackets and a variable called event ID. So this is saying that if you write website.com/event/ and the number, we're going to get this number in the function, and then we'll be able to process it. So this dynamic route is going to be very important for our API requests. Like, let's say we are looking for information about event number 200. We just need to send a request to event/200, and then it will pop up the information about the event. And then the last example over here is a post route. So as we talked previously in our Intro to API event, our post request is something that happens a little behind the scenes, and it's usually a request to create information. So what it's doing is just defining a post route to website.create. And I also wanted to tell you that if you try to send a GET request to this last example right here, your server will probably crash because it's not accepting any type of GET request. In fact, your server won't crash, but you won't have any result in the web page. It will show like not found or not defined. So yeah, as Antoine said, we're continuing some of the API as well as the beach cleanup series. So from the first series that we did, we worked on some HTML and CSS, and then we had a session about React and JavaScript. Then we talked about APIs, and now we're going to be building the behind the scenes for our project, the beach cleanup project. So we're going to work with some registration, some login, creating events, listing events, searching for events, and then rendering some of this content inside our template variables. Okay, so let me start sharing my screen real quick so we can jump into the demo, So we're going to be using this, hold up, share screen. Okay. Awesome. So we're going to be using this platform called Replic.com. So it's an online IDE, which will allow us to run Python and many other languages without downloading, without installing anything. So it's just easier for all of us to go through this workshop. So I will give you guys like 5 minutes to create a Replic account. You just you can register with your Google, you can register with your GitHub, I believe, and then yeah, I'll just give you guys some minutes to do that, and then we're going to create a Python file.
So thank you, Nathan, for that. I also want to mention how this connects to our previous events. So right now we're just doing it like how Nathan was showing with a template of an HTML and using Python code to render the HTML components. Now, the only difference of this versus React is that with React, you were just making you have your separate React app on a different port serving on it, and that would just hit your backend. This time, when it comes to the way Flask is doing it, it renders the HTML for you on the web server, and then sends you the new renders of web page. Sorry. So that's the main key difference. With React, you're just serving the React app. That's what they have, and then the React app will then make the request to the backend to receive the data itself. It won't the data is like the JSON data, event, title, all the data, all the information necessary for that event. This time, we're actually rendering, as in making the HTML page to be presented and then sending the page back to the user. So that's one thing I want to mention. That's a key difference between what we're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely, Antoine. So what Flask is doing, it's going to render our templates with the variables. So we're going to use this function in Flask called render template, and we're going just to pass in the name of the HTML file as well as the variables, and then our template engine will populate all those things right away to the person to see in the browser.
And Nathan, I know that you have extensive experience with Python. Is there any recommendations to our viewers and even for myself to learn more about Python or learn more about Flask?
Sure. So the best tip for Python is build your own projects. It could be the simplest thing right away, but that's how you actually learn. If you try it yourself, if you do something you like, and I would suggest there's this really good book which is probably available online. It's called Automating the Boring Things with Python. So it's this book that tries to go over a bunch of tasks that you could solve using Python, and usually those tasks are used in companies and or firms, or even like things for like schoolwork or like your academic life. So it has a bunch of like different tasks that you can build in Python, and then it also goes over like some basics of Python as well. And in addition to that, there is I think there's some websites like CodingBet if you want to learn some algorithms in Python, things like that. And there are plenty of YouTube videos about Flask, Python, and yeah. But the key to go is don't be intimidated. Try to get a project idea and develop yourself. You can even copy paste some things, but after you get used to it, Python is really beginner like friendly. You don't need to worry about declaring variables. You don't need to worry about stack overflows. You don't need to worry about buffer overflows. You know, Python is very friendly. Or even like segmentation faults. You know, from the C code, and yeah, you can just right away open Replic, create a new Python file, and start coding right away. So that's how I like to roll. I learned most of my Python most of it was self-taught, and I started doing hackathons like almost in my second year. I did like around like 15 hackathons, and that's how I got like a lot of experience in Python and specifically in Flask, because it's just so fast how you can create like a website or even an API and then tie it with other APIs. It's fascinating. So I would suggest to like anyone to start working on your own projects and just diving into it.
Perfect. Great advice. All right. So I believe that should be enough time for everyone to get Replit set up. So Nathan, let me bring your page back up.
Perfect. Okay.
And
So
I'm gonna make it full screen so everyone can see better.
awesome. Okay. Thank you, Antoine. So to start with, we can create a new REPL. You just do that by clicking on this button right here or in the plus sign. We're going to create a Python file. And so you just select Python and you give a name for it. Let's give it intro to Flask. Let's write it like that. Okay, so we wait a little bit. It's starting the file, beginning like a little virtual machine. So the cool thing about Replit is that everything is on the cloud, and just by using like Flask inside of here, we are able to like host a full-fledged website. It has a database as well integrated to it, so it's going to be very, very friendly, very nice to go through it. So let's jump into some code now. The first thing to do is to import the Flask library. So we're going to say from Flask, we want to import Flask, the Flask constructor, and then for now we will import let's see, request as well. And I think that's good for now. If we add more things, we'll just add it on top right here, but this is just importing the necessary files. And then after that, we say that app will be equals to, we call the constructor. So app is going to be basically the head of our website, right? It will hold the entire server over here. So we call Flask, and then we call our main function over here, which we're going to create right now. Or actually, let's create it like name, I think is fine. Yeah. Okay. So then over here, we need to add this thing that says that if the function being called is the main function, which we need to write it with lowercase over here. So if someone is executing this file as like a regular Python file, we want our app to run on like localhost, and with the port 8080, and we'll leave a debug flag as true. Okay, it's loading a little bit, I think. Let's try to run it real quick, see if it does anything. Oh, sorry, this is a string.
Hey Nathan, just for our viewers, could you actually zoom in by 1 so they can see it a little better?
Sure. I wonder if I can.
You probably need to do it through your browser.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, actually better.
Font size large. Is this a little better?
Yeah, just to make it easier for everyone.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So yeah, what we need to do is actually we specify our host, which will be regular like local host. So on Replit host, that's how That's how we create a localhost instance on Replit. We just put 000, and then we specify port 8080, and then we're going to leave debug as true, so we can see everything here in the console.
So I know we're doing this for Replit, but how would our viewers be able to do this when it comes to running it locally? Would they have to give it a different address?
Correct. If they're doing locally, we would put 127.0001. I mean, 2 zeros and then 1, then port 8080. Then if you run this on your computer, and open the browser on this port, your server is going to be loaded.
And that's the local host, correct?
Correct. This is your local address from the computer. Awesome. Okay, so if we run it here, it will execute. It starts running the server, but then it tells us that the requested URL was not found on the server. So this is because Replit automatically creates a link for us, but nowhere in our code, like we never created a route for it, right? So let's fix this error by starting to create a route for our users to access it. So we start saying that app.route, and then we define a function in Python. So def is basically define function. That's what is short in Python. So we define the function for home, your home page, and then if you're not familiar with this notation in Python, don't worry, I'll try to explain it thoroughly, but fortunately this series will be about like creating your API. So anything that you don't know, save it for like some notes and ask us after going through the demo. So we're going to just return, okay. So if someone tries to access the regular main page, which would be website.com or website.com/, we'll go over here. So if we rerun this and we refresh the page, now we receive OK. So our server is already running. If you try to input like this URL in your browser, it's already up and running for everyone to see. So that's something really cool about Replit and Flask. That in just like 5 minutes, you have already a link for everyone to access, right?
So Nathan, when it comes to my comment of how this connects to React, is this the way how you will send data to the React app?
So in React, since you run a React server, you would actually need to send API requests, and then we would return JSON data for the application. And then then you would render it on React. But on this series, we're focusing a little bit just on the HTML because React gets a little tricky with Flask, since Flask is trying to render and then React is also trying to render. So we're just gonna focus on like first writing some API requests, writing our own API, and then rendering everything at the end.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in this case, we're just returning like some kind of text or even like a number or anything like that. So if you were to send this request through like Postman, like an API, what did it do? I think I tried to load while I was running. So if you actually try to access this website right now, it works. And then on Postman, if you send a GET request, let me just pull it up real quick here. Let me screen share Postman. Let me screen share. So if you were to send a request to it on Postman, yeah, there we go. We would get the URL from we get the URL from Replit, and then we just paste it. We create a new request, a GET request, and then we put in the URL. We hit send, and then there we go. We get 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗹𝗶 as the body in HTML, which is really neat. So what we can do instead, since we're focusing on APIs first, let's write this as in JSON. So let me stop sharing and then share my repo. Okay. All right. So Flask has this really cool module called 𝗕𝗂𝗋𝗶. Right? 𝗕𝗂𝗋𝗶, yeah, 𝗕𝗂𝗋𝗶, which transforms anything you're writing into JSON. So any string actually into JSON, I believe. So if you write 𝗕𝗂𝗋𝗶 OK, it's going to return us a JSON object, which is how usually we will communicate our front end to our back end. So let's refresh it over here. Then it shows us OK, and then if you would run it, if you run this on like a Postman, it would show that now the type of return, the response of this request would be a JSON response. So then you can like use it with like other. Oh wait, why is it changing? Okay, so it would just basically give you like a JSON object instead, right? So let's just keep it as OK for now, and try to focus on writing some other code now. Right, so our objective as of right now is to register and log in a user. So Replit has this cool feature on the side, on the left panel. They have like this little cylinder with 3 disks on it. If you click on it, it's a database. So you can just import their database right here. Let's put this on the top. So it says from Replit import DB, which is short for database. So they have like some dummy methods over here saying like to set a key to a value, get the key value, delete a key, list out keys, this gives with prefix and so on. So if we were to use DB anywhere in our code, let me stop here because the console is going crazy. So DB is now our database, right? So if we put like DB like user equals to Nathan, we're putting Nathan on key user. So Nathan now would be stored in our database forever unless we take it off. Okay. So let's write a function to register a user in our database. Right. So let's create a function up in the top, and let's call it def create user, or actually register user. Let's do it. And well, for the purpose of this workshop, we're going to be using just an email, a name, password, and then if we need anything else, we can add it after. So for now, I'll just write paths because we are not working on it yet. We are going to write an app route before, so we know that if someone sends a request, we then will call this function. So let's do it down here after the main route. So if we do _route register /register, so if someone tries to access our register page with a post request, we're going to call register user. Oh, in fact, what is missing over here? Just give me a second. Why is it yelling at me? It's methods equals to post. Why is it syntax error here? Let's see. Am I missing? What am I missing? Register should have no difference on it.
Nathan, you have the
the semicolon.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. It's got used to the functions here. Forgot that. When you put the route, you don't need to put the colon because it just takes everything until the end of the function. So this is their notation. When you get _route, the next thing it expects is a function, and then it just reads until the end of this function. So when someone sends a post request to /register, we want to take the information that they send and pass it on the function right here, right? But what exactly are we sending over here, right? When someone sends a post request, they're going to send a post request to our URL, and then we want them to send like their data to us, right? We want the email, the name, and the password. So we learned on the Intro to APIs event that we can send GET and POST requests through the data form, and you can send this in JSON. You can send them in like a key value pair. So that's what we're receiving. I'm going to show you guys in Postman again as a quick refresher how to send these values, but let's get them first over here. So the person email we're going to get with request, which is from the Flask, from the Flask library over here on the top, request, and then .form, because we usually receive the email name and password through someone filling up a form or even just sending like a post request. So request.form email should get the email from the request. And then we want to get the username and the password, or actually, yeah, email, name, password, and then let's change over here to name and pass. Okay, so right here we got the email, the name, and the password, and then we want to check if it's empty. So if my email is empty or my name is empty or my password is empty, we want to return bad request. Right. So imagine if someone sends us a request over here to /register. We want them to create an account, but if they forget one of this inputs, we would need to alert them that something is wrong, right? So in fact, do you guys think that this would be an appropriate response for our error over here? Would you guys change this string? So imagine you're working on some kind of like big tech corporation that needs to give some better description of the errors. This would not be a good response. We would need to put at least bad request missing parameter. This is also a little bit generic because imagine you're working and the project has 50 types of parameters. You would want to put missing parameter and which parameter is missing. But for just the sake of keeping the code organized, we're just gonna leave as missing parameter. And since we only have three types of parameters, we still want the person using our API to do some work. Yeah. Okay, so we check if everything is empty, and then we return it. And otherwise, note that technically, since we are returning the function over here, we don't need this else block. So I'll just remove it. Otherwise, we want to call our register user function with their email, their name, and a password.
So Nathan,
Yes.
I know that there's always different ways of sending, I guess, response. How would you do that with Flask? Like, how would you send a 200, 300, 400?
Okay. So in Flask, if you're returning something that is like a string or like a number, usually just returns as a status code 200. But I believe you can also return. I can double check here though. It usually, since Flask is usually pretty friendly, and they have a lot of built-in things for you. So it automatically handles it for you. Like if you try to access something that doesn't exist, it will give a 404. If you try to send a GET request to a function that is only accepting a POST request, it will give it a method not allowed code, status code. So they do that automatically for you. However, you can return something like this, if I'm not mistaken. You can go over here, return bad request missing parameter, and then like a status code, I believe. Let's give it like 500. I believe this would work. However, okay, so let's attempt to do that. Let's run the server, see if everything is running fine here. Okay, it's running. So if we go to, oh, it's installing the libraries again. Just give me a moment, guys. It's installing the dependencies. All right. So if we copy the link over here, let me screen share it to Postman real quick. Just change it to Postman. Application window. There we go. Is it up yet? Antoine, can you pull up the Postman screen, please? Thank you. So we already have the link over here. We sent a post request to our link, and then the route was register. So we just type over here register. And then we go over here on body. We press form data, and then it will give us this like key value and description. So we would write over here, the email is test, the name test, and then password test, or let's leave something blank to see what happens. There we go. We would get a 500, which is the status we put in the return statement over here, 500 internal server error, and then the response is an HTML response, bad request, missing parameter. So Antoine, this is what would happen if we specified like a status code. So I put 500 because it's just a generic error message, but this is actually technically not an internal server error. It's just a person not filling up all the forms. But this is how you specify a status code with Flask. Right, let's go back to the code. Good question though. And actually it's very important to remember that, because when you're working on a big corporation or even like a small one, they want to get as much verbose from something. But yeah, let's go back to our Replic. Let me pull it up over here. Okay, Antoine. Thank you. Awesome. All right. So other cool thing about it is that on the console over here, we can see that someone tried to get a GET request, which was this blank page, and then someone from this IP tried to access or register function, and then it returned on status code 500. So this is so cool that we can see alive that someone is trying to access it. So if you were to try to enter this URL in your browser right now, you would see, okay, if you tried on or in your own Postman or even your own application, you can try it right away. So this is live. You're already creating a live application over here, which is awesome. But yeah, let's keep working here on our register user function. We pass the email, the name of the password, and then we go over here. We need to check, right? So when you're thinking of a database, what kind of things do you need to look for in a database? Is this user in the database before? Have like this, is this user already existent? Is this email valid? Or, well, we would check for the email, I mean. Is this user in the database? Check for email. Is this name valid? You know, things like that. Usually you would have a username, and most of the times applications try to have a unique username, so it's easier to query things in the database. But since this is a small example, the only thing we need to worry about right now is if the user is already in the database, since our email will be the key for the user. Right? So let's check. If my email is in my database, my database with table users, right? So our database right now is currently empty. So this is our current status of the database. It's currently empty. So it's asking, is this email in the database.get users? So what it's trying to check for is like, does the table users exist? So you see how we don't even have anything in the database yet, is empty. So this will return none. So we also need to check if my database is equals to none. In Python is like that. We check that if this table doesn't even exist yet, or my email is not in here. All right, let me break it down this a little easily. So if we say if this table doesn't exist, we create the table. Go over here and create table users. And users will be a list because you can have many users inside this database. So if the table is non-existent, create a new table. And then we check if my email is in my database.get. Let's actually make users a table of objects. So if my email is in my database of users, you want to return some kind of error for our function over here. Let's return false, because the registration was already the user is already there. And then if it's not in the database, we just want to put it in the database. So table users, and then our email, and then we put the object over here, which would be the name, and then our password would be password. Oh, sorry. So right here in this function, with just a couple lines, we check if let me comment this, check if table exists. And then this creates a new table. And then we check and then we return false if it's already in the database, and then we create a new user. Since no errors happened. And then we want to return true, and then we need to tell the person that queried our API that we successfully created a record in the database. So we go back to our function and we hold it. Let's create a variable to hold this. Result will be the return statement of this function. And then we say that if my result is true, this statement is redundant, but I'm putting it on here so you guys can like see it and interpret it easily. So if the result is true, we want to return user created. And let's pass status 200, status code. And then otherwise, we would return user already in the database with another status code. So let's put over here, return We'll put an else statement for you to see it. Return user already exists. Let's pass it at 500. Okay, so right now we already have a database that you can register users. So let's run this. Let's run and try on Postman. Okay, it's running. If we refresh the page, Replic is just being a little slow.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you to share your screen.
Yes, sorry.
No, you're good.
Let me rerun this. Okay, there we go. Now, okay. All right, it's running. So let me share my screen on Postman so we can look at this request real quick. There we go. Perfect. So let's try to put it an email test.test.com with the name test and password test. Let's send this on Postman, see what happens. It says the user was created in the database. What if we try to create it with the same email and a different name? It says that the user was created. That's interesting. I wonder, let's check out why this is happening then. See, that's what usually happens. I wonder if anyone caught any mistakes that probably happen over here. All right. I need to start sharing it and then share the Replic code. Okay. Right, we're up and running on the Replic again. So we look for a new table. If the table doesn't exist, we create a new one, and then we check if the email exists. Right, so on all the requests here on the console, we got a 200 response. So this over here should have said something. So now let's print what's happening inside our database. Let's rerun this, and then I'm gonna send the same request that I wrote on Postman, and then I'll just leave the screen on the wrap over here, but it should generate a print statement on the console for us. All right, let's see. Oh, it's still loading up. Need to rerun it. The Replic does this sometimes, that you need to refresh the page. Since I forgot to stop the code, let's try to run this. Then it should say right here that actually our database is still empty, right? Because and what happens after then? What happens after? Let's rerun this. Give it a second. Okay. Now if we send this again, we sent a push request. So it's actually not doing anything because REPL's database only works for keys and values. So this statement over here that we do db users is actually just creating like an empty kind of dictionary, and it's not able to add anything to it. So what we're going to do instead then, we're just going to try to create a general user just using the email. So we can delete this because we don't need to worry about it. And again, this is how Replic database is working. I wanted to go over this, and so you can see the difference from like a regular database. It would have like tables, it would have all those kind of things, but Replic usually works on like a key value fashion. So we check if our email is in the regular database. If it's not, if it is, we return that we weren't able to register the user. Otherwise, we are going to create the entry with this email on the database. Then we can print here email. Sorry. If we run this code, okay. Let's give it a second. Okay, it's up and running. Aha, there we go. So right here, it tells us that we were able to create someone with name, and password test. So I sent a request on Postman, and we got the result. And then I tried to run again, and then we got a status 500 saying that the user already exists. So I'll show that to you on Postman right now. Let me screen share it so you can see that it's actually working. And this is again because Replic like handles databases differently, and some other applications also run the same way, as having like a key value pair instead of having tables and all those different things. So I'll share the screen on Postman really quickly. Okay. Where did it go? Wait. It's not identified. There we go. Postman. Okay. Awesome. So if we go over here and press send, it says the user already exists. But then if we change the email, it says that user created. And then if we try again, it says that user already exists. So it's working, guys. We have like a database, we have a registration process working, and that's amazing, right? Let me go back to the code. And then we're going to slow down on using on Postman and then do more work on the repo. I just wanted to use Postman so you guys can see that it is working as we go. It's already up and running for everyone to access. Okay. All right, Replic's up. Okay. So if we check here on the right, we can see that we were able to create a new account, and then the person tried to create it again and got a status 500, which was user already exists. Okay, so now that we register someone, we want to make this person log in, right? So in this case, that this is an API, we just want to check if the email exists in the database. We don't need to worry about doing some crazy type of requests and things like that. However, since we're serving some dynamic content more towards the end of the session, I wanted to make people log in. But usually in the API, registering is just creating like an authentication token. So what we could do is, after someone registered, we returned an authentication token. And then when the person sends a request with the authentication token, we check it if it's valid. So that's how it would be like a usual workflow for an API. The person registered, gets a token back, and then the person keeps using this token for everything. But since we're going to be connecting this later to the 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗹𝗶𝗶 app, more in like the future sessions with data store and app engine, I wanted to make like just a regular login process. If someone gives you the email and the password, you set their name, and you just do things like regularly. So let's create a route for it. We do app the route. We call if someone goes to the login page or calls the login. We don't need to put the methods. However, it doesn't hurt to do so. By default, Flask, if you don't insert this, it's going to be a get method. So let's do this stuff. Login user. Return. Okay. So if someone tries to access the login page, it would just receive an OK for now. Then if we run it, it will show up over here. But what we want to do is call a function. Let's say is user valid, and we call login user. Oh, okay. And also, before I forget, so the / login over here, we are going to add another / and we're going to add a dynamic route. So we are logging in by the email. This is actually not a good idea to use a get parameter over here. I wanted to know if anyone has any idea why doing a login with like a dynamic route. This is like a question. Let's say I put like an email over here. So let's say if we try to do some kind of login like that, this wouldn't be a good idea because we need to pass in like some kind of password and the name as well. Or actually, I mean just the email and the password. So if this was a get method to login, you would be doing something like this, right? You would pass the email and password like that and in a get request. So this is very problematic because imagine using like some kind of public computer, and someone can like look at the history of the browser, and then we'll see that you made a login request to using this email and this password. And since it's a get, it will show up in your browser history, which is like a huge flaw in security. And in addition to that, it's not a good practice to do so. So we're going to change this method to post. So when someone tries to log in, we need to get the information, the data, remember? So from above here, it was email, name, and password. In this case, we just want the email and the password. And then we pass in email and password. We get the email password from the form. And then we call this function, which will return true or false if it's valid. So let's create this login user function on the top. So let's do def login user with an email and a password. So in our database, we need to check, is the email in our database? Question mark. Is it in the database? If yes, we're going to go here. But if it's not in the database, we already know it's invalid, so we just return false. However, if the email is in the database, we need to check if the passwords match. So we go if a database, if the entry of the database that has this email password. So this is like a Flask notation to it. Let me put the state of the database so you guys can see it better. So this was from the slide that I was trying to explain how like this nested structures work. So on the database, we have like an entry over here called with the email like test.com. This is like a key, and then it has a name and an age. I mean, a name and a password, sorry. The age was from the example. So we go over here. Is the email in the database? Is test@test.com in the database? Yes. Okay. Then navigate inside test@test.com. Like, what is inside this test.test.com? It's name and password. So that's why we do db email and then password. And this is confusing because the square brackets, this is what you usually use in an array, right? Like if you were to do like something like this would be an array. However, this is how Python manages like dictionaries or this specific type of structure. So we check if the password that we have in the database matches the password that we received in the function. If it matches, we have a match, we return true, otherwise we return false. And we're gonna return true, but actually we want to, yeah, we can just return true and then we'll get the name in the other function. Okay, so right now we can log in a user. We scroll all the way down and check, is the user valid? If my user is valid, put it just so you guys can see it. If my user is valid, we want to set a variable that holds the name. So this is, since this section is just about creating APIs and working through like some Python and Flask, we're going to do this in memory. So let's create a variable called my current user, and it will be empty. This is like a global variable in the Python file over here. So my current user is empty. However, if I found a valid user, we're going to say my current user be equals to the database with my email and the name of the person. Email. Oh, okay. This needs to be the field. So we're going to say, go in my database with this email and get the name of the person. And this will be our current user. And then over here, we say global my current user. To specify that this is a global variable. So if we were working on a workplace scenario right now, the workforce, this actually is not used because we are just saving this variable in the memory of the server, which is not a bad practice. What you would want to do is to create a cookie in the browser to hold like a little authentication token saying like, oh, this person is logged in. However, for the sake of simplicity, we're just living like that. Like there is a current user. And however, if the user is not valid, we want to let's return. If the user is valid, return user logged in. And then let's print the name of the user here. So this is concatenation in Python. We just put like user logged in and then plus int user. However, if the user is not valid, we can put like invalid credentials. Valid credentials. And in this case, this error is still not good enough. We would want to check like if the user exists on the table, or if like let's say if someone tried to log in but the email doesn't exist, we're just saying valid credentials, right? It's pretty generic. We could have put like something like if the email is not in the database, email's not in the database, we say you need to register. You need to register first. But I want to keep the code organized, so let's just keep it like that. Invalid credentials. And this function should be good. Let's put the status 200 over here, and let's give it a 500 over here for like internal server error in this case. So now we're able to log in. Let's run our server and hop onto Postman really quickly. Okay, share my screen. All right, sharing on Postman. Perfect. Okay, so we already know user abc@test.com is a valid one. So let's just change this to login. And let's see if it runs. We are not passing any names. We're just passing email and password. And then it says key error test. So why does this happen over here? Let's check it out. Oh, it's because the password in one of them, it just needed to have quotations instead. Apologize. What was that? It was just a little slip on line 23. It was a quotation mistake. Well, let me rerun it. Okay, and then I'll show it back what was the issue. Okay, but if we try to log in, hey, there we go. User logged in, and then this is the name of the user in the database. It was just called name. But let's register a new account then. Let's register someone with the email 123, password 123, and then let's put Nathan in the database. If we run this, it says user was created. And then if we try to log in, it will say user logged in, and then it will tell me Nathan. So right now we already have like a basic authentication system working for us, which is really cool. So let's hop in back to the code and work on some routes for the 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗶 app, like creating an event, listing events, and searching for events. Share back my code. And I also need to show what I fixed, because if you're following along and typing with me, I need to open this up. Okay, sharing on Replic. Okay, thank you. I changed this over here. Before, this was just email and password, but if the password was invalid, we would get an error, because this, like, we need to put specifically the string password, which would be exactly this, like the field password. So let's see if I can explain this a little better. We have this case over here. We have the name, which is equal to Nathan, and then we have a password, which is equal to, I don't know, password, for example. So yeah, that's why I had to change it like this, because this field, we are looking for the field, not this argument. It was just this quotation mistake over here, but now this is fine. And if we look here, it says that we tried to log in as Nathan, and he found us over here. He registered, and the login was always successful, as you can see in the codes 200. Then it just appears as red because that's how it shows up the time, and this is because it was running at the same time. Don't need to worry about it. But yeah, let's go ahead. Since we already have like an entire authentication working, let's see what's next. We need to create event, list events, search for events, and then just render like some basic HTML. Okay. All right, let's do 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗹𝗱𝗆 create. We want to create an event, and we're going to do that with a post request. Oops. Create a post request, because again, if we try to create with a get request, we would need to put all the creation details over here, all the variables. Like this was a get, we would put like /create, the name of the event, the time of the event, and then the location of the event. And then this is not like a good practice or like something that people do. So we just manage it with a post request, and then we create a little function like create event that will create an event for us that will add the event to the database. So let's write this function on top of the code in a little bit that will I'll just change this to create page instead. So create is good, so we don't have like overlapping functions. So we will call a function that we're going to write in a little bit called create event, and then we're going to pass some stuff to it. And again, what are we passing to it? It's whatever we receive in the post request. As we've done previously, we use the request of form from the other functions, but then we want to receive some information about the event. So for example, for a few, let's say we get the name of the event, and then we want to receive the type of the event. Let's put event type, because type is a keyword for Python. Here we can keep it like that.
Hey Nathan, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Just a quick question. Where would you get this data from for this request that you're doing the way in the bottom? But yes, where exactly for the HTML? So our viewers will know.
Of course. So in the HTML, you would have to create a form. So in HTML, if you create like a form, create a form with like some inputs, HTML, and then you get this information and send it to the /create.
Perfect.
Does that answer the question well?
Yeah, that answered the question, just so that people can understand where this data is coming from like a web page, instead of just doing it from a API call like on Postman.
Correct. Awesome. Yeah, this would be the case that you see like some input fields and then like a little submit button. You know, that's what it's doing. Like if you go to any website like Google, they have an input and a submit button. So you type in the input, and after you press the button, you're sending a request to you're sending a request to their server. So that's what it's doing. And then in our case, since we're receiving as an API, we're getting it from the form data. which is over here, request a form. Yeah, we got the name of the event, the type of the event, and I don't want to add a lot to it, but let's put a time, like an event time. And then event date. And to keep it consistent, and name, type, time, then date that's going to be passed to us, and event location, and event city. Yeah, well, it's just leave a city. These variables are so organized. Let me pressed. Okay. So as we checked before, we need to check if everything is valid. Like if we don't have any empty strings over here. So, well, let's do this. If this is empty, or this is empty, or a good practice would be just throw this in an array and then check with a for loop. It's okay, we don't need to do that. It's empty. Then we check the date if it's empty. And then this is not a new line. Just notice it's the same line, just so you don't get lost. It's just the font is a little big. And date or event city equals to empty. So if any of these are empty, we return missing parameters, and we return an error. And something. Otherwise, else we create our event with our event name, event type, the time, date, and city. And the city. Okay, awesome. So let's see how I'm going to do this. Okay, so we create the event over here. We just need to create the function now. We're going to copy this line. We'll go all the way to the top. And then we do find function create event with all those things. And now we just need to insert it to our database. Right, so what would be the best way to do this? Our database currently is holding holds our users. So this would be technically be a problem unless we stored in some kind of like table format or it's like an event type. Yeah, so this database, they lack a little bit of documentation, but we can do things with like a list keys with a prefix. So we can get a key that starts with like a prefix of E or like event. So like let's say the users, we check right away for the email. So an event we are going to create a function to list all events. So we need to keep in mind that our database for Replic has some limitations. So we need to adapt our code to it. So to create an event, our key or event key is just going to be the name of the event. That's right, key for event will be eve for event, and then the name of the event name. This is going to be our key. So when we do db email, like how we do over here to log in someone, we're going to do db and then this key over here. So we create the event. Let's do db. In this case, we're running a little short on time. We still have like half an hour. So I'm just going to create the event right away. We're not worried about duplicates right now. So we just go and write eve, and then we concatenate the string with event name. All right. So this right here will create our key. And then we will copy some of this because those are the parameters. And then we need to put quotations and everything and set them equal to something. Equal to each other. Those are the parameters. The event name will be equals to the name of the function right here. And then the field event type will be equals to whatever we receive in the function. Time as well. And the same follows for all the other variables. This is how we're building our little object, basically. And like you may seem that this is familiar, like JSON, they use like this type of things a lot. So that's why we see it pretty frequently here on the APIs. But yeah, we then just successfully created the event. And keep note that since we're not checking for duplicates, if you try to create two events with the same name, it will replace all the value, like the entire thing. Return true, since we successfully inserted. Like there is no way that you could break this function unless you don't send a string over here. If you try to, even if you send like a number, I can do this. It should work. This is just, so like imagine someone sends a event name like 123. If you try to concatenate it like that, sometimes it breaks because Python is expecting two strings. So we just convert this to string, then the rest should be fine. So yeah, we now successfully created an event right here. And we say return event created 200. All right, we can try this really quickly on Postman now so you guys can see that everything is working perfect. Share the screen. All right, sharing it. I think it's taking some time to load up. There we go. Perfect. Q. Now we change this to create, which is the route that we specified. And then we have parameters right here. We change this to name. The name of our event. So let's create a beach cleanup. It can be a full screen beach cleanup, a beach cleanup event. And then And then we have an event type. Well, in this case, we can put like a page cleanup. Another type of event is page cleanup. And then the time we can put it like a noon. It'll be a string. And the date, you can just like today, pi day, or tomorrow since it's already past 12. And then the city, put Orlando. We should be good. We have all the parameters. They're not empty. Let's leave one empty to see if our code is acting properly. If we leave one empty, oh, hold up, I need to run the server. Apologize. Okay. If we leave one of the fields empty, we should be expecting to. Here. It's taking some time to load here. Hold up. Okay. If we leave it empty, it should return us an error, which indeed. Okay. Hold up a second. I need to refresh the Replic real quick. It does this sometimes. That's something you always need to remember to like stop your code and don't type stuff on top of it if you're using a Replic. Otherwise, you need to reset it a couple times. Just give me one moment. Run the server. Okay, there we go. Then we send us the create request. And there we go. We received that we're missing the parameter. So if we put a time now, you can check over here that the event was created, which is awesome. So we created our first event. Now we need to list the events that are going on. So we're going to use the special this list key with a prefix, which is going to help us like find all the events that are available. So let's do this over here. We do app route with the name of, stop running. Oh, hold up, I need to, sorry. Forgot to screen share.
You're good.
Yeah. Because we're going back and forth over here. Hit to Flask. Right.
There we go.
Okay. So let me delete this line. All right. We're creating another route that goes to list, which will list the events. So now my question to you guys is, what kind of method would we use to list all the events? Are we sending any type of information to the server? You know, because we like notice that every time we use the post request, is that because we are receiving information, the server is receiving information, right? The login, we receive the email, the password. The event creation, we receive the name, type, time, date, and city from the event. The register, we receive the email, name, and password. So on this route over here, we are not receiving anything. So we can just leave it as a get request. So if someone tried to get request this, we want to show all the events that exist in the database. So list of all events. List of all events will be function get events. And then we're going to create over here on the top to go through our database. Go def events, and then as over here, Replic has this matches thing that we can insert. So anything with the prefix eve is going to go inside matches. And then we can, I believe we can just return matches. Right? Matches, this will return list of keys. Okay. So what we want to do then is create a list called polyvans. This is a list in Python. So for each match and matches. So for each key inside, for each key that starts with EVE, we go ahead and add it to our list. We add the object to our list. So this is how you add it to a list in Python. You do .append, and then you do db, and then the each match. Because each match is actually just holding the key. So in this case, we would get only one match over here. We would get the event that we just created here in Postman that was called 𝗕𝘂𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗶. So we just return this, and it should be good. Now, when we go all the way down over here, so if there are no events listed, this is empty. So it's fine. We can just return the list of all events right away without worrying about it. And yeah, one thing that was missing is the function events, or list events. And there we go. It should be good over here. So if someone tried to query this, I wonder if I can edit over here. Okay, custom domain, never mind. Okay, so if you try to access list with a get request, it should show up or 𝗕𝘂𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗶 event. Let's check it out first. Let's see if the code is all good. List. We can delete this. It's redundant. Let's rerun.
It's the code. It's ugly.
Okay. All right, it's running, and it says method not allowed. Method not allowed. Interesting. Because I think Replic is just being a little slow. Let me refresh it. Sorry. That's probably from running all the time over here. But the cool thing is it saves all your code automatically for you, so it should be okay. Let's run this. Yeah, it should be starting to work. Okay, it's running there. It says that the method is not allowed. Am I missing something? Double check everything. Oh, yeah. Oh, because I'm trying to send a post request. Oh, my apologies, guys. Let's see what's working. Build and now return a valid response. Top almost half the form. Okay. And then the return statement over here, we need to return, unfortunately, a string. So this is going to transform into like a string for us. Run the code. And then I can even show this in the browser. It doesn't need to be on Postman. There we go. Okay. Get events, list of all events. Let me just check what we're doing again. We are getting the B of each match. Interesting. Okay. So if we go to our browser over here, let me share a tab. Chrome tab, new tab. All right, I'm sharing a new tab now. Oh, it doesn't show the URL, but here it is. I typed the .list, and they found the 𝗕𝘂𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶, which is in our case the key.
Nathan, what are you trying to show exactly? Because it's just showing a black Google home screen.
Oh,
it's not showing any results.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, it's showing that we got a new event, which is the 𝗕𝘂𝗶𝗶𝗶, the beach cleanup, which we successfully created. Perfect. Let me double check something now. So on the list, we got all the events. I'm just wondering what Replic is doing with matches. Okay. So if we refresh this, I'm going to open Replic again. Doing some debugging over here, printing stuff on Replic. I'm gonna change my screen in a second. Oh, this works. Oh, because I'm returning matches. Okay, let's go back here. Yeah, that's why it's showing only the key. It's showing the event, the beach cleanup, because I'm just returning the key. I am supposed to be returning the list of all events, and then it will show us all the details. So let me go back to Replic here.
Yeah, so we can show them. So we can show our viewers.
Of course. Yep. Let's go on Replic to the Flask. Okay. Is it a show note? Alrighty. So over here on our function getEvents on line 36, we have matches. This right here gives all the keys that start with EVE. So we go through every match, and then we get the object from the database, then we insert it to the list. So we should be returning this list. However, the matches are just the keys. So let's just return all events. And then if we request now this on the browser, let's go back to the browser so we can excuse me, so we can see this. All right, let me share the screen. tab, which is this one, I think. Yep. So there we go. Now when we go to /list, wait. Oh, what did I do? Replit is being quite a bit inconsistent. Sorry for that. When I tried before, oh, so good though. There we go.
Hey, it
So we
happens.
see, yeah. So there we go. Now we see a list of events over here, and this is like formatted like this because it's an API. So if we were to put it, we're running a little low on time. So instead of searching for an event, what I'm going to do in this last 10 minutes, I'm going to just display this information with a dynamic page. All right, so let's go back to our code one last time. 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗶𝗴𝗡 and should have Flask. Okay, the replit is up. Right, let's close this and stop the server from running so we don't get in trouble. And let's see here. So we have all the API requests, everything set up, the list of all events, but how do we show this event in like with some HTML instead of doing all this like crazy notation with dictionaries, with lists and things like that? So we're going to finally use a little bit of the template engine. It's going to be a short example, but that's perfectly fine. So let's do here C event. Let's just do C, as in like seeing the list of events. Create the route. This will be a get request, so we don't need to worry about putting anything. It's a get by default, and then we're going to show the events in HTML right here. So we call the function that we had before to get all the events, and then we're going to call a method from the Flask module. It's called render template. And then we will call this, we need to create an HTML file. We're going to call it index.html. And then we're going to pass a list of all events. Okay. Is this right? Oh, we need to, okay. So on the top of your code, you need to put render. It's a function from Flask. It's loading. Just give you a moment for the server. And render. The connection is a little bit up. This will load for sure. Yeah, I apologize, guys. My internet is a little slow. Okay, while it loads, so we talked a little bit about the structure of the project as well. So I'm going to create the folders really quickly. Just waiting for it to load. While it loads, does anyone have like questions? I'm gonna go a little bit over 4 to take a look at it. But Antoine, did you check out the chat to see if everything's good?
Yeah, I actually was going to say after you show your last example, I'll gonna go back to the dashboard. I mean, go back to the slide deck and see if there's any questions.
Awesome. All right, I'm just.
So you just make sure to show them the finished result.
Will do. All right, so right here in our files, let's add a folder called templates, and let's create also a folder called static. We're not going to put anything on static. Let's just create a HTML file. So it's creating that for us. And then I wonder if they have a shortcut. Yeah, they got it. Tab body. And then I'm going to say that for each event in, what was the name of the variable? It was a long variable. All event list of all events. Let's go over here, list of all events. So for each event on the list of my events, we're going to do a heading with the title of this event. So this bracket notation is for the template engine. You don't need percentages. So it's one curly bracket if you're doing like for loops or if statements. And then if you're accessing like a variable, it's two curly brackets. We're going to put each event and then the name of the event. Right? So that's, instead of event name, it's actually, instead of name, it's event name. Then we close h1. After that, we want to create some paragraphs, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to put the event time, type event type, event time, and date, and then it was event city. Right. Then let's just break a line. Yeah. So this index.html page will be rendered when someone goes to our website /c, and it's going to pass this the list of all events to it, and then it will be rendered in HTML. So let's run this and give it a shot. Okay, it's updating some dependencies. Okay, serving Flask. All right, we're good to go. One thing before I forget, on our index, we need to end the for loop. So, end for. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me share to the Google Chrome now. So if you go to the link, my website, and then /c, we will be able to see a list of applications rendered in HTML. Okay.
Nathan, you shared the Replit.
Okay, my bad.
No, you're good. You're good.
So let's go for this one. So if we go to the list /c, that's the link it goes to. And the cool thing is that if you put this in Postman, you also get this, and it's just HTML in this case. But if we had more events, let me create a new event on Postman really quickly so you can see it happening. And just post. Okay, so I created a new event. If I refresh this page, it will show up over here. The new event that I created. I created this event on Postman. So I just did like a post to /create, then created the name of the event, the type, the time, the date, and the city. So this is it for the demo, guys. I'm gonna take some questions because our time is at the end. Yeah, I hope you guys could understand what is going on. What is going on? Let me open the chat as well. Have the chat open.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Nathan, for that introduction to Flask. Right now, we're a bit over time, so I'm going to give it about 3 minutes to see if there's any questions. If not, Nathan and I and any of the other tech leads will be happy to help and answer any questions in our Discord. So let's just see if there's any questions coming up.
Everything good?
Well, it seems, I guess there's no questions as of this time. But like I mentioned earlier, feel free to message any of the tech leads in the UCF Discord for the DSE, and we'll be happy to help. Other than that, thanks for the attendees for showing up, and thank you, Nathan, for this presentation. Other than that, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and we're signing off now. Have a nice one, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.